What's up, everybody? Welcome to Transition Tuesdays. For this Tuesday, September 8th, 2020, I am your host, Russ Williams. I'm so glad you could be here today. I'm quite aware you could have been anywhere in this world today. I know you could have been anywhere in this world today, but you decided to be here with me, and I appreciate that. And more importantly, I appreciate you. So welcome to Transition Tuesdays, everybody, in this balmy, I think it's like 85-degree weather here in New York City. So this is a great time here in New York. And I got a special guest on the line. We're going to go over that information as we have Valerie joining us today. What's going on, Valerie? Welcome to Transition Tuesdays. But before I begin, I always like to state my intentions for Transition Tuesdays. And my intentions is to give you the opportunity to laugh, smile, think, and engage in honest conversations about your life's transition. So that's what we do here on Transition Tuesdays, as we have Chris, Uncle Smoothie Williams joining us today. What's going on, Uncle Smooth? Welcome to Transition Tuesdays. And speaking of honest conversation, I have on the hotline, the Transition Tuesdays hotline, my special guest. Special guest, are you there, sir?
Yes, sir. How are you, Russ?
I'm doing well. Now, again, I'm going to bring you out the right way as special guest, all right? So let me give a little rundown to my audience on your bio. Now, my special guest is a former Manhattan College Jasper, is a former teammate of mine. So, Jaspers for life all day here. He is a partner at Crossover Consulting Group, LLC. He is also the founder and the director of 2-for-1 Sports. We're going to go into that in depth. And who we have here? Also, we got Richie joining. What's going on, Richie? Welcome to Transition Tuesdays, my friend. And also, this young man is my Jasper brother from another mother. So, Transition Army, please help me welcome Mr. Steve Boyle to Transition Tuesday. Steve, what's going on, my friend?
It's a loaded question, Russ. There's a lot going on, but life is good. And I always love trying to catch at least a few minutes of you on your weekly Transition Tuesday. So thanks for having me on as a guest.
No problem. Now we got you on as a guest, which is good. And like you said, there's a lot going on, man. So like when you come on my show, Steve, I like to make my guests comfortable because I can't see you, but you'll be able to hear some stuff. And I want to play a song for you, Steve. I'm not even sure if you might like this, but I got a feeling you might like this song. It's an older song. It just reminds me. It reminds me, when I hear this song, I'm just reminded of Steve Boyle, my former teammate. So I'm going to play this for you, Steve, and let me know if you can hear it, okay? Let me just play this tune here.
All right.
Do you remember that song, Steve?
Jump around, yes.
Jump Around by House of Pain, Everlast.
Russ, it's so funny. Like, and the reason I remember that song so much is, and I know you know my wife Carrie, but so I asked her to marry me at a camp for kids with cancer out in Blairstown, New Jersey. So I was teaching and coaching after I graduated in Manhattan on the Lower East Side, and I went out and we were running this camp. Back then it was like 91 or 92, and this was like pre-iPhone.
Right.
And I had this idea that we would make each cabin of kids and their counselors, they would make a music video.
Okay.
And the youngest counselors did their video to that song. They were on the playscapes, and they were all, and we like took forever because they did the whole like 6-minute version of Jump Around. That song reminded me of it.
There we go. So I hit the mark there. Good. All right. My DJing skills are good. Up to snuff. All right. Hey, let's see who else we got. We got Al joining us. What's going on, Al? Welcome to Transition Tuesdays. We also got William joining us. What's going on, William? Welcome to Transition Tuesdays. We also got Annette from the D. What up, though? Joining us here on Transition Tuesdays. Welcome, everybody, to Transition Tuesdays. Glad you guys can make it. Hey, so Steve, I know you just mentioned, man, there is a lot of stuff going around and going down here, man. I'll be remiss. How are you and your family doing during these two pandemics going on? Like, how are you guys doing? How are you guys coping?
Yeah, no, and I appreciate you calling it two pandemics, because that's for darn sure. We're good. I mean, Carrie and I had gone from, making some transitions, if you will. I'll keep on brand for you tonight. And we had both left our longtime jobs as high school educators and decided to go full time with our our consulting and with our camps. And with that came a lot of travel. We were literally China, Puerto Rico, London. I mean, Russ, it was fantastic, and the fact that we could do it together was just terrific.
Right.
And then all of a sudden, the world shut down, and we went from not only basically one at a time, the girls came home. And so we went from being empty nesters traveling the world to having not only our 3 daughters, but then we took in a brother and sister who were struggling. And so we had then seven people in the house.
Wow.
But I look back at it, and it was a blessing. People often ask, what's your best parenting advice? And the thing I would say is try to have dinner every night as a family, whenever you can. So even if it means having it at 9:30 at night or 4:30 in the afternoon, because the magic happens there in terms of building relationship. Well, then all of a sudden we had dinner for 71 straight nights together because of COVID.
Wow, that's a great thing though with that.
Oh, absolutely. Especially with they were grown, they were opinionated, and they had their own stuff. But now they're all doing their own thing. So actually, Alana, our oldest, she took a job in Montana trying to turn their current Democratic governor into a U.S. senator, and it's a challenge in a state like Montana.
Okay.
And then Michaela, our middle daughter, she had walked on to Holy Cross Women's Rowing Team, and so she's a senior there and has had to experience. We might get into it tonight, but it's been crazy. And then Siobhan, our youngest, decided to take the semester off to start her sophomore year at George Washington University, and she's just doing some research down in D.C. So we're back to being empty nesters again, but we're about to hop in the car and take a 20-day trip across country and visit our daughter in Montana, and then visit some cities and some old friends along the way, and maybe see if there's some folks out there who want to bring 241 to their locales. One of our first stops is going to be, I don't know if you remember my roommate for 4 years. Remember Mike Crime? We called him Rock.
Yes.
So he's in Buffalo, and we're going to stop and see him on the as our first stop. So it's about 400 miles away. That's about how many miles we'll average every day on this journey of ours.
Wow. Okay. So you guys are moving and grooving still during these pandemics. Oh, that's good stuff. Hey, we're gonna talk about your businesses that you're a part of. But before we do that, Steve, I want to go over you playing at Manhattan College, because you were like, you and many other people are very fortunate. It's not a lot of people on the planet who play Division I basketball. If you really think about that, if you break that down. So I want to go over a little incident that we were a part of history there. Steve, the time in which, I was a lonely freshman, and I think you were probably a sophomore at the time, maybe a junior. But when we walked off the court in Beaumont, Texas, University of Lamar, do you remember that?
Russ, I remember it well, because in fact, it's crazy, because that was, growing up the way I did and where I did, and kind of being sheltered, what was crazy about that whole thing was I had never experienced outright racism, like witnessed it.
Yeah.
And I remember Beaumont, Texas being flat out racist to my black teammates when we were down there.
Absolutely.
And I'd never seen anything like it, but for sure, I remember you sort of doing like waving everybody off the court, because our coach had said, we're done. Yep. And we were all looking around like, what's going on? I remember, I think it was Brent Musburger that night, on halftime of Monday Night Football, said, little old Bob Del Bove of Manhattan College has pulled a Bobby Knight, and Manhattan College walked off the court against to host Lamar University or so. And it was in the New York Times the next day.
Yep.
That was crazy, and the reason they referenced Bobby Knight was because he had just done it 2 weeks prior against the Russian Olympic team or something.
Right, an exhibition game. Yeah.
Yeah. So I remember it well. We had some traveling ahead of us at that point. I don't think that was an out and back, right? Was that on our way to Hawaii?
Yeah, that was on our way to Hawaii. Yep. So I know the instructions was when we got, we were told to get dressed, go to the hotel, don't order out. Says, because you just never know. They might put glass in our food and everything. So just stay put, and we leave in the next day at 6 o'clock in the morning.
Unbelievable.
I know.
No, I mean, it was, you know, and for me, I hadn't traveled all that much at that point in my life, and the whole thing, it was quite the experience. So, no, look, Russ, I was a sophomore because I'm one grade above you. I'm class 89. I think you're 90, correct?
Right. I was 92. Well, 91 officially, but I redshirted, so 92 I graduated.
Okay. Yeah. And so we, I mean, I was fortunate. I mean, I was probably the 9th best player on my high school basketball team as a freshman, and 4 years later, through just dumb luck, I'm starting against Notre Dame in Madison Square Garden. And, you know, for that to have happened to someone with my athleticism skill level, I mean, I've played against a lot of guys over the years that were much better players than I was, but I was in a position to get lucky. You know, I worked hard, and I like to think I was a good teammate, and I got rewarded for that. And it was just, you know, it was like a convergence of so many things had to have happened. With, you know, Gordon Chiesa had left, Tom Sullivan took the job, Eddie Lawson had been in a car accident, so he was redshirting. They had lost. It was just timing, and I just was there, and it changed the course of my life. The fact that I was able to play Division I basketball. None of the things, including meeting my wife, having my 3 daughters, the jobs that I've done, running the businesses I do. It was quite a. But you don't know as an 18-year-old how it's changing the trajectory of your life, right?
This is true. And speaking of timing, Steve, like Steve is a modest fellow, guys, out there. But Steve, now I'll be remiss if I don't mention this. Aren't you the all-time Steve? Like one steal in one game, you're the all-time steals leader, right? Didn't you get like 12 steals in one game?
I mean, at the time, it was the MAC record. It was would have been 1990 against Holy Cross, who had beaten us by like 36 points. And so it wound up being recorded as 8, and it tied the Dratty Jim record. And you know, because I mean, steals are funny too. So it should have been 9 because I mean, you know how tall I am. I don't block anybody's shot.
Right.
I left my man and snuck up on a double team from behind. And I snaked the ball from a guy who was probably about to start a shooting motion, but the ball hadn't left his hand, so I had ripped it from him from behind.
Right.
So that should have been a 9th steal, but instead they gave me 8 steals and a block shot. So I'm putting an asterisk on the record.
That is funny, man. That's funny. Hey, Steve, and also I'll be remiss now. Again, you got to think about the totality of Manhattan College, the history of Manhattan College. And again, Steve, I talk to you about this all the time when we see each other. It's people like Steve Boyle who has changed the course of Manhattan College basketball. And the reason why I say that is because it was a guy by the name of Steve Boyle where we were making a coaching change. And we're in the meeting with the president at the time, Brother Scanlon. And, you know, we were voicing our concerns. We want a different choice of coach. And I remember, now again, I'm a freshman. I remember my boy Antoine Owens, he dubbed me he called me a mute because I never talked. And I definitely didn't talk in this particular meeting. But again, during this meeting, one guy comes out of the shadows and changes the course of a program. And that's you, Steve. And I think you should, when it's said and done, when the history books about Manhattan College, I think it's your voice who made a difference for coaching changes and all those coaches that come about, from Steve Lapis to Fran Fischilla, you know, to all those coaches that came about. If it wasn't for your voice that evening, Steve, and I always want to ask you, man, what gave you the strength to step up and say, hey, look, we need a coaching change?
Well, look, I mean, without going too into what the situation was, I mean, I think a lot of it was, you know, and this has always been my mantra with coaching and teaching and counseling, and I often see those 3 things as synonymous. It's the power of relationship, right? And so, you know, I think we had a good relationship with each other, but it was clear there wasn't good relationship between what was happening at that point between the players and the head coach, between the head coach and the assistant coaches, and there were many who were threatening. They were just going to leave. They were like, I'm going to transfer. I'm not going to play.
Yeah.
And the is that you can walk off. And so, I mean, I had kind of a funky experience in that I was awarded a scholarship, a full scholarship, and then it was taken away from me. And then, so at the time it had been taken away from me. I had literally nothing to lose, like some of you guys, right? I mean, you were talking about, losing everything, your education, your opportunity to play.
Definitely.
And I had a lot of other things I could have done. And so I just sort of said, hey, as a walk-on, I've got nothing to lose here. And it was going to be my senior year the following year. I was as committed to the program as everybody else. I went to every practice. I worked as hard as everybody else. And I often did it without compensation and without minutes. I just loved being part of it. So I felt that was kind of my voice. And I kind of knew I didn't know for sure, right? But I kind of leaned towards leadership and towards, kind of knew I'd be a coach at some point myself. And that's really what that was. It was an opportunity for me to practice my voice. And that was also a walk-on situation, right? I mean, I've drafted notes to a book called Keep On Walking On. And basically the concept of it, Russ, is that as a college walk-on, you continue to put yourself into walk-on situations the rest of your life, especially in an entrepreneurial situation. And that's with relationships, that's with business, that's with a lot of things. And in many rights, I suppose that was a walk-on situation when we walked in to meet with the president of the college at that time.
Yeah, definitely. Hey, let's see who else is joining. We got Bonnie joining. What's going on, Bonnie? Welcome to Transition Tuesdays. We got Ron Leclario joining us. Welcome, Ron. We have Jay Edna Nola joining us. Welcome. We also got Elizabeth joining us. Welcome all to Transition Tuesdays with my special guest, Steve Boyle here. Hey, so Steve, now you touched upon it. So you got an upcoming book. I like that title, man.
Yeah, so I mean, I'll be honest. Part of what I'm doing is I'm telling people about it because it's been in the brain for a long time. And what I've learned about writing a book, it's like going out to exercise, right? Sometimes you got to put the shoes on and just get out the door and go do it.
Right.
So I've got to start writing, and maybe this is something you can ask your audience. I mean, I'm thinking about it in two different ways. One is to sort of do the Keep On Walking On kind of the story of my own life, and I was thinking about the preface would be starting with my dad literally walking onto the boat in Ireland to go to England and then come to America, the same thing that my mom did, and then how that sort of translates to what it's like to be a college walk-on, and then talk about the benefits that you learn from being a Division I walk-on as you go through life, or do it as a chapter story where I would do my intro, but then I put out the APB to everybody that I know in my network and say, hey, do you have a good walk-on story? Like Steve Lapis, do you have somebody from Villanova or UMass? Or, or maybe, Russ, you have a high school teammate who walked on someplace or you know somebody. I mean, there's some good walk-on stories out there that, not everybody's Rudy, right? I mean,
right.
So, but that people that because of their experience as a walk-on had good life experiences. So that's kind of the concept, is to also inspire young kids to consider trying to walk on, so that's sort of what I'm thinking about. I don't know what your thoughts are.
Well, I think you could do it make it twofold. Tell your story about the walk-on experience in terms of like your mom and dad, the walking on process with that, and then follow that up with the walk-on stories book. I think that way you got two books in the hopper right there, just like that. Yeah. But I think you start with just telling your story about your walk on, about your family's lineages of walking, like literally walking from Ireland here, and also involve your story as well with the walk on, and then I think going from there. That would just be my advice. Me as I wrote a book too, so that would just be my advice.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's good. Yeah.
Cool. That's good stuff.
No, I know Transition Game Plan. I got a copy of Transition Game Plan next to my bedstand. So,
I appreciate it. There we go. I appreciate that. I appreciate the love, man. I appreciate that. Let's see what else we got. We got Elizabeth joining us. I mentioned Elizabeth earlier. Welcome again, Elizabeth. We also got Kathy joining us as well. Welcome, Kathy. Welcome to Transition Tuesdays. Hey, so now, Steve, we touched upon it. Businesses. Talk to us a little bit about your crossover consulting group. What are your clients? What's the consulting group all about?
Yeah, I mean, Russ, if you don't mind, I think well, Crossover Consulting Group is, I would call it the sister company at this point to 241 Sports.
Okay.
Was my first entrepreneurial endeavor. I mean, I shouldn't say my first. I mean, actually, when after I left New York, Carrie and I moved to Seattle, and we thought we'd stay for a year.
Wow, okay.
And 5 years later, we came home from Seattle with our youngest child at the time, and she's now 24, believe it or not. So
I know, right? Time flies.
It's crazy, right?
Yeah.
So we started a couple businesses out there. One was I was enjoying. Photography had been a hobby, and I thought at that point you were buying film and the whole thing, and so and lenses. So I started a small sport photography business, and then we ran what we called the Cougar Hoop Camp for girls, and at the time it was the largest all-girls basketball camp in the state of Washington. Okay. And we grew it pretty rapidly. So anyway, fast forward, we moved home, and that daughter we had out there was 9 years old, and she tried out for the local travel soccer team here in Connecticut. And we got the call, Russ, and you may have heard this story before, but your guests may not have. And the soccer coach gives the call and says, "Hey, listen, your daughter's our number one prospect." And I'm like, "Dude, she's 9 years old. She's nobody's prospect. Give me a break, right?"
Right.
So all of a sudden, he's going on about how she's going to fit into her Brazilian style of play, yada, yada, yada. And I finally say to him after about 20 minutes of him stroking us, I said, "Well, look, my wife played lacrosse in college, and Alana's showing some interest in lacrosse. Can you tell us what the conflict could be in the spring?" And he all of a sudden gets an angry tone. He goes, "Hold on a second." And he acts like he's going to go talk to the guy in the back of the car dealership. And the next thing you know, he comes back on and says, "We're no longer interested in your daughter."
Why is that?
He went from number one prospect to no longer interested simply because as a 9-year-old, she showed interest in playing another sport besides soccer. Wow. And I had started to see this trend happening, right? And so Carrie and I, we said, look, we could shout from the mountaintops so we could do something about it. And we said, let's infiltrate. Let's come up with something. And we came up that night with the tagline, "Life's too short for just one sport." And that talked about changing the course of our lives. So 241 comes from our tagline of "Life's too short for just one sport."
Oh, okay.
We started with 61 girls that summer at the school where Carrie was the athletic director. And within 4 years, we had outgrown the facility, and we got recognized as one of 8 model programs in the United States, and by the Aspen Institute in Washington, D.C. 2 years after that, I'm presenting on this concept of physical literacy and sports sampling with Michelle Obama was there.
Wow. You were at the White House then, Steve?
Well, it was actually at the museum. Michelle and her brother Craig were the keynotes. Okay. And I got to introduce this concept right after she and then she and Craig talked about growing up in Chicago. 2 years later, God bless him, I was also at Project Play. This is the kind of the key organization around the globe that's involved in youth sports. Okay. So Kobe was there 2 years later, who you probably know was a real advocate for youth sport. Obviously, absolutely. He was coaching his daughter when the tragedy happened. Yeah. And so our approach propelled us to being able to speak on the national level around this concept of sports sampling and the value of it, and what we call physical literacy. So as we started to grow that, and I was able to grow an international network around this concept of physical literacy, we decided, well, look, we still need to be able to make some revenue if we're going to leave our regular jobs. And my wife as a long-term athletic director. So we started Crossover Consulting Group so that we could do some of the other things we were doing when it was during the school year, because 241 was primarily a summer camp business. Okay. Crossover Consulting is more of an educational consulting business. And we do program development around athletics and physical literacy. We do college advising because my job in the public schools was as a guidance counselor. So that's what I did for kids. Right. And we broker out tutors. So we have folks that need SAT tutors, they need Chinese tutors, they need whatever. and then we kind of pivot, right? So right now we just created this thing called hybrid supervision. And so what it is we have a cadre of college kids, because so many elementary and middle schools have had to go to this hybrid model. And so what we've done is we've created this virtual supervision for parents that don't want necessarily anybody coming into the home, but they got to work full time.
Right.
So we can support folks virtually. So, we test out certain things, and, that's just part of what we do. We try to create services that could be of benefit to folks during these trying times. And so between Crossover Consulting Group and 241, we're busy, but there's a nice intersection between the two businesses, which is good too.
Okay. Great, man. So have you been really affected due to the pandemic, COVID-19, or has that?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
No, for sure. I mean, part of it was that, my biggest gig with Crossover Consulting Group was supporting a global school system called Widow School and Studios. And so I was supporting a school in D.C. I shouldn't say a school because it's one school, many campuses. So they had a campus in D.C., a campus in Shenzhen, China, and then they were going to be this year opening up a campus in Brooklyn and in Suzhou, China. Well, the pandemic just threw the entire organization into a tailspin. Yeah. And so that was, when I tell you it was an incredible gig that I had going, that was why I was able to travel as much as I was.
Right.
And so I could go to these different countries, these different cities. And then with camps, we had to stay on top of our game with all of the changes. And we were waiting for the CDC to come down. So we waited for like 6 weeks before the CDC sent down nonsense that might as well have been written by the White House. Not to get too political,
right.
It was as if it was written by a child. And, they'd say something like, we recommend that campers not go to camp if they're sick. Like, you recommend, in a pandemic, that they don't go to camp if they're sick? We recommend you don't go to camp if you're sick, whether it's a pandemic or not. You're not coming to camp and getting other people sick.
Right.
So then we had to really change things and prove to the municipalities and the private schools and the cities where we were that we could deliver, good programming as safely as possible. And to be honest, Russ, we became a model for other folks. So we ran our first camp in Canada this summer. Terry and I weren't able to go, but we consulted from where we were. Our flagship camp had over 300 kids, and we ran the only track meet up and down the Eastern Seaboard. We had multiple Olympic qualifiers at our track meet.
Wow!
No one else had the courage to sort of say, "Hey, this is how we're going to deliver on these protocols." So, right. Yeah, we were impacted. I'm not going to lie, but we were able to do enough to stay afloat and add value to families, I think, that appreciated our approach.
Yeah. So I would imagine once this pandemic is over, maybe vaccines might be involved. Probably things will just pick up and probably be more plentiful for you guys at 241, correct?
Yeah, I think so, Russ. This trip we're finding that we're hitting a little bit of a tipping point in terms of people that are interested. We've always had a dream of having an overseas model, but we'd love to be in as many cities as possible. We finally have our scale down, and so we can go into any town, any city, any school, any country, and deliver on scale our approach of having kids sample as many sports as possible with the idea that, look, you and I as college basketball players, we arrived at that point probably differently, right?
Yes.
And so I did by, I think one of the only reasons I made the team is because I could run all day. You remember, right? When we could do the 6 a.m. workout.
Oh, boy, yes. You used to lap me. I know that, Steve.
So I grew up playing anything and everything. I just sort of fell in love with basketball as I got to high school. And so but then having, taught and coached in New York, I coached at LaSalle, and it was, Shem God Wells was there. He turned his name into God Shem God.
That's right, yep.
Ron Artest was there. He changed his name into Meta World Peace.
Meta World Peace,
I guess I coach at the school where people change their names, but Eddie Olismo was a little bit after us. But there were a lot. But I coached soccer and track there, and so while it was a basketball school, there were a lot of kids there that didn't identify with basketball, and then I moved to Seattle, and it was the same thing, right? Where there were kids. Hey, I like basketball, but I'm not very good at it. I might want to try something else.
Right.
And so, my whole mission in life is to get kids moving. Now, look, I still play hoops. I have what I call the old man Sunday morning basketball game, at least pre-COVID, and we're talking about trying to get it back. And for me, it's a lifelong game because, thank God, knock on wood, my knees are still okay, and I can get up and down.
Yep.
But I want everybody to be active for the rest of their lives because it's good for your emotional health and it's obviously good for your physical health. And
absolutely.
So that's our life. That's our life's work at this point.
Gotcha. Let's see who else is joining us. We got Malik Means joining. What's going on, Malik? Welcome to Transition Tuesdays. We got one of Manhattan College's finest, Carrie Wilson, is joining us here on Transition Tuesdays. We also got Keisha joining us. Yep, got Keisha joining us from the D. What up, though? Thank you, Keisha, for joining us. And we got a comment from Smooth here. Steve Smooth says, always enjoy giving buckets. He said, always enjoy giving them buckets at the alumni game. He's talking about you, Steve, okay? But he says you never back down during the alumni games.
Oh, God. I miss those, Russ. I'm talking about a tradition that's been a ton of fun. It's funny. I just told you I still play in the old man Sunday morning game. Well, I'm always repping the Under Armour sneakers that you helped get us the hookup with.
That's right. That 1 year, right? I know that alumni. Well, it was 2 years. Yeah, we got 2 years sneakers. Yeah. Maybe we need to work back on. We need to get back on that train again. We'll see what we can do. We'll definitely see what we can do on that. Man, okay. Hey, so Big Steve. So Steve, we got Buthero joining us all the way from Spain, joining us on Transition Tuesdays. There we go. We're international now. Jasper's an international. That's good stuff. Hey, so Steve, so I know, so you're a major advocate of like when kids are growing up to play more than one sport. Because like I know having discussions with you, you said a lot of times these kids are burnt out when they're just playing that one sport, right? So when you being an advocate of playing more than one sport, that might help in their development both physically and emotionally, correct?
For sure, and I think the big difference between our generation, and not to sound like the old guy, is that and Smooth will probably attest to this as well if he's still tuning in.
Yep.
Is that part of where we built our competitiveness was at the playground.
Yes.
And the nice thing about the playground was there were no adults involved. Right.
Nope.
Like right now, the problem with youth sports is it's so hyper instructive. And that kids don't really know the value of calling next and then maintaining your spot at the court because, and now look, there are some negative things around that as well, right? Kids start cheating, people are fighting too much, whatever.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you learn to navigate life skills to be had.
Definitely.
And so part of what we try to do in our programs is we teach kids how to pick sides without making the kid who gets picked. I mean, look, I used to love going to the park and being the last guy picked and then just breaking ankles, right?
Doing work, right.
For me because, but not everybody, has played enough hoops to be able to do that. And so I don't necessarily, endorse, having captains and then letting people pick. So, and then stereotyping and saying, hey, well, that kid looks like he sucks, so he's not going to get picked.
Yeah.
But what I do advocate for is that kids should know how to organize their own games. And they shouldn't use space, equipment, any of that nonsense to say, well, we don't have enough guys. I don't have the right shoes. I don't have the right gear. I don't have the right ball. I mean, just figure it out. Like, if you want to play, play.
Right.
So our whole model is, first of all, we tell our coaches we don't want you over-instructing. What we do is getting the kids playing as much as possible. And as coaches, if you can play as well, jump right in there with them, and then teach them how to modify, right? So, we would do some of our programs at, housing projects. And if we didn't have the right equipment, we just tie a rope across from tree to tree, and that became the volleyball net, right? We would teach how to do any, part of the problem sometimes is that kids are like, well, soccer's 11v11. Well, no, it's not. It can be 2v2. It can be 3v3. And trying to get kids as many touches and reps as possible, like we did when we were growing up. The problem I find with hoops today is that AAU has kids playing way too many games, way too many practices.
Definitely.
And they burn out, and then your high school season is considered lesser than your AAU championship season, which I have a problem with.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, we got Eric Weaver. He chimed in. He says no one plays in the parks no more. Which is that's a fact. Chris says facts on that. He says is where you learn your game. Yeah, that's so true. That's true. And you learn about organization. You learn to organize when you're out there playing in the park. You that's where you get your competitive spirit from and drive. Like when I used to play back in the days in the park, which you playing to win, because if you lose, you're not gonna be, you're not gonna play in the next game. So, you going all out. You're learning to be competitive. And it helps too if you got some game, because if you do happen to lose, you just talk it up with the people. Be like, hey, look, I see you got next, man. Keep a spot for me. I mean, that's what I used to do. But
no, for sure. But the other issue that's different too, Russ, man. Can you imagine if back in the day everybody's filming everything? Like kids don't want to. They don't want to show up as the guy who got his ankles broken.
Right.
And so play defense, and nobody wants to get dunked on, but everyone's filming everything, and so. Unless you got like crazy moxie, right? Like unless you can really ball, kids they're not likely to take risk because it's not worth it if they're going to show up on everybody's Snapchat story.
Yeah.
Or if they're going to go viral because they tripped over their own ankles trying to play defense.
Definitely.
And that kind of breaks my heart, because for me, the beauty of the playground and the park was I could go home for 3 hours or maybe 3 days, and I'm going to work on a move, and then when I get to the park, I'm going to try it out. Well, when you try it out on a live person, you might fail,
right? And
you don't want to fail on YouTube, because then you may never show your face again.
That's right. Yep.
I don't know how to fix that necessarily, except to try to teach kids. Let's be kind. Like, like if you wouldn't have wanted to been the guy with the ankles broken, why are you blasting it out? On your feed, so that comes from teaching and coaching, and hopefully, modeling for kids how to be kind. I mean, it's not to say you don't talk a little junk, because Lord knows we all did that.
Absolutely.
But trying to make failures go viral, I got a hard time with that.
Yeah, I got you, Steve. We got Eric said, playing the old men, getting the toughness, and really learning the game. Yes, that's true. Man, when you're out there playing hard, doing that. But again, a lot of these kids don't play. They don't know the concept of it. But again, it's all about, learning the concepts, and that's how you do it, through competition. But, we live in a different world now. But again, we got places like, 2-for-1 Sports that can help you out in this process. Hey, so Steve, before we run, man, because I know you're a busy guy, and I appreciate your time, man, you coming on as well. Hey, how can people get in contact with you, learn more about 2-for-1 Sports?
Yeah, I mean, the easiest thing, handles are at 241, the number's 241, no dashes, sports. Okay. So Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and then obviously, my email is steve@241sports.com.
Okay. And we'll post that.
We're always looking, Russ, when we went down, when you were still living down in New Orleans, it was a dream for us to get down there. So we're always looking for new places to expand. Our hope is eventually to be able to, serve more kids who otherwise couldn't afford a program like ours. Like right now, we're about 80% parent pay and 20% sponsored.
Okay.
And we don't really like doing the whole, rich kid camp, poor kid camp. We really think an integrated approach is the way to go. So we like to work with community organizations, with nonprofits, with schools. We never turn anybody away. We don't make people prove they're poor. Like, hey, I want financial aid. Like someplace, you got to go with the freaking tax returns, which we think is crazy, right?
Yeah.
Having grown up with 7 brothers and sisters, if my mom and dad were humble enough to ask for a break, I'm not going to make anybody prove they need a break. So, so we love working with organizations that have that same philosophy.
Definitely, man. Man. Hey, Steve, I appreciate what you're doing. Getting a chance to talk to you about that. I mean, you felt definitely feeling a need or niche, that needs to be done for, especially for these kids, for the 2-for-1 sports. I think is a great concept. I'm looking forward to being a part of that. If anything I can do to help you out, feel free. You always have the forum here. That, and also, we're gonna have you back on when you make those. When you have that book, or books, I should say. We're gonna start with that first book, but again, we'll have you back on for that, man, too, because I look forward to reading that. Those two interesting stories that you're gonna write about.
Well, good. Well, you're building in some incentive for me, my friend. So I appreciate. Lord knows, as much as I want to get it done, I could use a kick in the butt. So I will do it. Keep on walking on. Hopefully this time next year I'll have it written and somewhat published.
Yep, and now you got to do it now, Steve, because now this is on film. So you got to do it now. Now you have no choice. Now you got to do it.
Yeah. All right, Russ. Sounds good. Well, listen, thank you for having me. I appreciate it. And if I can never be helpful with anything, you know how to get a hold of me, my friend.
Absolutely. Thank you, man. My brother from another mother, man. My Jasper brother from another mother, Mr. Steve Boyle. Thanks again, Steve. Appreciate you, my man. I'll be in touch.
All right, Russ. Cheers.
Okay. Thank you, man. My man, Mr. Steve Boyle, man. 2-for-1 Sports. And I'll post this information too once we repost the Transition Stories episode here as well. Man, it's good stuff. Good stuff. My man Steve Boyle, man, changing the world, doing great things, doing phenomenal things, man. See anybody else joining us here. So Chris says, great stuff, Jasper fam. Yes, absolutely, man. Great conversation with Mr. Steve Boyle. Hey, so guys, what we do here, we transition, right? We transition into current events and what's going on, right? So, hey, I want to talk briefly about this president, Donald Trump. And I want to talk a little bit about, if you guys haven't heard about this Atlantic article, talking about how the president might have called some people and the members of the military losers and suckers. I wanted to get people's takes on that. First off, do you guys think that he might have said such a thing? Like, were you clutching your pearls when that might have came out? Allegedly, I better say allegedly. Allegedly, he might have said he called the people who were in the military suckers and losers. But were you surprised at that? Do you think he said such a thing, or do you think it's maybe nothing to see here? Are we making a big thing out of nothing about this? So. Wanted to get your take on that in terms of that particular instance. If he did say this, I mean, that's unfortunate. And again, this president is, I think he's an intelligent guy. He knows if he loses the military vote, I mean, you're as good as done, man. So Malik says, do you really think he didn't? Well, no. If you're asking me, Malik, and which you are, no, I definitely think he did that. I mean, He's been known to say that. So, but I want to know what you guys think. Do you think he did that, Malik? What do you think, man? Or anybody else did? Do you think he said such a thing? Did you clutch your pearls when he said something like that? Do you think this guy can say this president, the occupant of the White House, do you think he can say such a thing like that about military and military families being losers and suckers? I don't know. What do you guys think on that? But yeah. So again, he knows that if he loses that military vote, I mean, that's a strong vote. People, and it can change the course of elections. So that's why you see this president backtracking just to make sure, But I think the interesting thing about this particular comment is you don't have anybody coming to his aid saying like, oh, no, he wouldn't do that. I think it was, Sarah Huckabee Sanders. I think she came out and said that. But there hasn't been anybody else. No one else has come to his defense. Eric says not. Now Malik says the real question is, will it make a difference with his base? Yeah, we shall see. I answered the question for you, Malik. Well, I think that's the way his base gets down, so it ain't gonna make a difference. Matter of fact, it might enhance his base. Saying something like that. So he might come out and say that he did say that for his base. Eric says, surprised at anything he has said allegedly. Yeah, well, again, we can't be surprised at anything this guy said. That's true. That's definitely true there, Eric. Definitely true. So, no. And also, speaking upon this president, I recently saw, and I'm not sure if you guys saw it recently, he was up on the podium. He made a speech about, there's going to be a COVID-19 vaccine, ironically, before the election. Before the election. So, here's the question I propose to everybody. If there is a vaccine that comes out headed by this administration, will you take it? Will you take it if this vaccine comes out, especially before the election day? Will you, number one, will you take it? Will you be the one to take it? Will you follow the advice of this president? You remember when we had I'm acting like it has stopped, but no, it's still here. The coronavirus, COVID-19. Remember he came out and said that he had this drug. I forget that. I can't even pronounce the name of it, but he was just saying like, what do you got to lose? Take it. It's a gift from the heavens. Take it. Take it. So when this vaccine comes out that he has, this administration, before no election day, will you be taking it? Malik says only after you take it. You mean me or you mean the president, Malik? And that brings me to what I'm going to say right now. And Eric says, will we have a choice? Absolutely, we're going to have a choice. I think so, Eric. And here's the deal. And here's what I say. I got 2 words for the president about this vaccine. Okay? 2 words. You first. All right? You first. You take this vaccine, or better yet, give the vaccine to the people, maybe to your base, or give the vaccine to give the vaccine to members of the Senate. Okay? Maybe do that. Maybe on the Republican side. You guys go first. You first, and then I'll see if I'm taking it. So answer your question, Malik, you asking me, will I take it? Hell no, I'm not taking that. Nope. President, you first. Matter of fact, I think we should start a hashtag. You first. All right, let's start that, man. You first. Hashtag you first. Especially with this vaccine, man. Because again, that vaccine is apparently supposed to go down now. It's going to be a vaccine that's going to allegedly come before the election day, November 3rd. It's going to be a vaccine that's not tested. You know what I mean? Not FDC approved, none of that. But again, they're expecting people to take that. Not me. You first. The occupant of the White House. You first. Let's hashtag that. You first. All right, guys? Hey, so ladies and gentlemen, if we were able to make you laugh, smile, or think during this broadcast today, you, my good friends, have accomplished something major today. So celebrate your victory. Celebrate your victory. Chris says they may try to make it mandatory. What do you mean by that, Chris? Wait, how's that going to happen, Chris? How are they going to try to make it mandatory? You mean we have to take it? Now, how are they going to go about doing that, Chris? I mean, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but how do you think they're going to make it mandatory? I would love to get your thoughts in that. Eric says, but what if they don't? You can do, what if you, okay, let me make sure I'm reading this correctly, because again, my glasses, I got to get closer to the screen. But what if you don't? You can't do business or travel. I don't know, man. Hey, man, I guess I won't be traveling. Because again, like in terms of you asking me, Eric, again, I'll wait till the president or people in his administration or his people, you take it first. I see how that goes, and then I'll be taking it later. So if I have to bypass travel and business at this time, I will be doing that. You first. So Chris, chime in there, man. What do you mean by mandatory? What do you mean by it being mandatory? Because that's an interesting slant on it. Is it possible? Can that be done? Can that be done like legally? Can you make it mandatory that we have to take it? Let's see. Chris says E is on the money. So Eric says, so Chris says that Eric is on the money in terms of that. Making it mandatory, like you have to take it. So making it mandatory. Yeah, but how can they go about doing that though? How can that happen? I mean, is that legally? Can you do something like that? You don't want to have it be a situation like, remember the Guyana tragedy? You know what I mean? In which it was like a cult-like figure with Jim Jones. How he either told the people in Guyana, either you follow my ways, okay? And if you don't, number one, you're going to drink the Kool-Aid, which is laced with poison, or you're going to get shot in the head. So you got to choose. So they didn't really have a choice in the matter. But, Okay, but again, so again, you didn't have a choice in that matter, and maybe that wasn't a good analogy. But I'm just thinking about coats and thinking about making things mandatory. So I digress on that one. But I don't know if you can. I don't know if you can make it mandatory. I don't know. I don't really see that. I don't see that. I think that might be a heavy burden to bear to making it mandatory. But hopefully I'm off. But again, if you ask me, you first. You guys take it. We'll see how it goes with you guys. Give it to the people. Give it to people, who need it. Give it to those people first. Again, with the president, his president's people, you guys try it first. You first, and then I'm following second. That's how I'm getting down with this in terms of this this vaccine that's supposed to just pop up all of a sudden, ironically, just before Election Day. I don't know, just something to think about. Something to think about. Man, oh man. Let's see. As my theme music plays in the background. Hey guys, I want to thank you guys from the bottom of my heart for you guys watching Transition Tuesdays each and every Tuesday. I appreciate that very much. So, if you guys haven't been following me thus far on Instagram, please follow me on Our World Transitions with an S. And before we get out there, Eric says, at 64, I don't care because I'm not taking no shots. I hear you, Eric. I hear you. Now, Chris says, I'm not an advocate, but very similar to students having to take a flu shot. Yeah, I hear you guys. But again, you first, me second. That's how I'm rolling. Hopefully I'm not the only one. Make that a hashtag. You first. All right, we're going to do that. We're going to do that. All right. Hey, so guys, also, my man Steve, who joined us, Steve Boyle. Thank you, Steve, for coming on. I appreciate it. Steve mentioned my book, Transition Game Plan, Simple Steps to Achieving Personal Success. I want you guys to go out and get that, too, on Amazon.com. Or I can always shoot you a personal copy I can sign it, give you a personalized copy of my book, Transition Game Plan, Simple Steps to Achieving Personal Success. Just inbox me. I can show you how I can get the book to you ASAP. Now, couple of advertisements. See the picture up there? That is from my daughter, Anissa. If you go to Art by Anissa, ANISA on Facebook, take a look at some of her portraits. Get those, snag those up today. Make sure you do that. Before on the way out, we got the Silver Fox, George Sylvie, joining us. And we got my former teammate, Mr. C, Tom Corrigan, joining us. Thank you so much, guys, for joining us. Better late than never. I'm glad you guys are here. Now, you guys are looking at this shirt here, right? Okay, Native of. This is a great apparel shirt. My man Malik Means, who is probably still on here. This is his company, Native of. Go to nativeof.com. Nativeof.com to get your shirt like this. Get this here. We might have to, Malik, man, you gotta send me some more gear, man. I need some more colors. You gotta send me some more gear, man. I want you guys to be a sponsor of the show. Nativeof.com. Represent my man Malik Means, black-owned business. I'm representing. You get your shirt today. Nativeof.com. Appreciate it. All right, guys. So as we always say in parting, happy transitioning, and we'll speak to you soon. Take care, everybody. Be safe. Praying for you all. Thank you. Take care.